Today's lesson is going to be on multiple representations. And what I mean is we are going to look at 4 different ways to represent the same information. Those 4 ways are going to be with a table, ordered pairs, a graph, and by mapping. So if we look at example number 1, we have the input and output. Essentially, the input is going to be our x's and the output is going to be our y's. And this mapping shows the input and the arrows are directing where the output or what output that input is essentially connected to. So what I would do first is go from mapping to an ordered pair. And we're familiar with ordered pairs. So I'm going to open my braces. When you have braces, that means you have a set. So we are going to have a set of ordered pairs. So I'm going to look. The first one is going to be 1, 1. And I'm getting this right from this mapping. We have 1 going to 1. My next one is going to be 2, 5. Then I have 3, 9. And then my last one is 4, 9. And if you notice, the 3 goes to the 9, and so does the 4, and that's okay. You can have multiple inputs going to the same output and vice versa. Now that we have the ordered pair, it should be nice and easy for you to put this in a table. We are familiar with an X and Y or a T table, where X's are going to be our input and our Y's are going to be our out. So I'm just going to write them right down. My first one is going to be 1, 1, and I'm getting these right from the order pairs that we already wrote down. The next, we're going to have 2, 5, 3, 9, and 4, 9. And this extra line on the bottom doesn't make sense. It's a standard table, so if you don't fill it in, that's okay. So now we've went from a mapping, and we listed our order pairs from that mapping, and from order pairs, we constructed a table. So now finally, we're going to graph it. This graph is kind of small and it's going to be hard, so just do the best you can. So I'm going to do 1, 1 first. I'm going to say that's about there. Then we have 2, 5. So 2, 5, 3, 9. It'll be about up there. And then we have 4, 9. So it's going to be right next to this 3, 9. Again, it's a very small graph, and it does go up by 2, so it does look a little off, but just do the best that you can as long as you know how to plot coordinate points, then you get the point of what we're doing here. So that's really all that there is. We go from a mapping, ordered pair, to a table, to a graph. So now let's look at number 3. It is the same thing. It's very similar, except in number 3, we're starting with a graph, and we have to fill in the other representations. So again, I am going to look at I'm going to go from the graph, and I'm going to put these in ordered pairs because it's easiest for me. So the first one is going to be -7, -3, and that's this one right here. Again, we're going to open braces and we're going to make a set of ordered pairs. The next one is going to be -3, 7. It's over here. And then I got 3, 5. This -3, 7, hold on, should be about up here. That's a little off right there. And then finally we did 3, 5. And then 8, well, I would say that's probably about 7, 7. Okay, so I did -3, 7, and then we're going to have 3, 5, and 7, 7. Okay, so using my coordinate plane, I was able to make a list of or a set of ordered pairs. I am then going to go from my ordered pairs and I'm going to put these right into a table. So I'm just going to list my X and Y. So I have -7, -3, -3, 7, 3, 5, 7, 7. And I have 4 here, so I'm going to have 4 over here on this table. And finally, we're going to do the mapping. So it's important for you to label, we have the input and the output. Now that first example used rectangles. The most common one you're going to see is that you're going to have ovals. That's the most common one that you see when we're doing the mapping. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to list my x's. I have -7, -3, 3, and 7. And then I'm going to look at my outputs. For my outputs are going to be my y, right? So I have -3, 7, 5, and 7. But you only need to list, I usually put them in ascending order, right? I start with the lowest. -3, 5, and 7. Since there's two 7s in the y, you only need to put 7 in the output once. So then let's look. My -7 goes to my -3. I'm just going to draw arrows. Here, -3, 7. I have 3, 5. And I have 7, 7. So again, there's two different x values that share the same output of 7, and that's fine to leave it just like that. All right, the ones I'm not doing, so number 2 and then 2 of them on the back are going to be left for you guys to do in homework and then show me in class, and that's going to be your homework grade. So if you turn it over, I want to do number 1. Now we don't have a necessary list. They're not giving us a mapping. They're not giving a graph, an order pair, a table. They're giving us equation, and we have to complete the table and then complete the different representations of this, of the equation. So for this equation, the x values are already listed for us. So that's our input, right? So we want to see what we get for y when we plug in those values for x. So the first one is 2. So y equals 7 minus the absolute value of 2. Well, the absolute value of 2 is 2, so 7 minus 2 is 5. So I'm going to put a 5 right here. Now let's look at the next one. 7 minus the absolute value of 1. Absolute value of 1 is 1. 7 minus 1 is 6. 7 minus the absolute value of 0. Well, 7 minus 0 is 7. 7 minus the absolute value of -1. Now, the absolute value of -1 is 1, so I have 7 minus 1, which is 6. And then finally, we have 7 minus the absolute value of 2. Absolute value of -2, I'm sorry, is 2. 7 minus 2 is 5. So if we fill in our chart, we notice that we do have some of the same. We have 2 5s and we have 2 6, and that's okay again. So from the chart, let's list the ordered pairs. We're going to open our braces. We have 2 5, 1 6, 0 7, -1 6, and then finally we have -2 5. And we're going to close our braces again. All right, we're going to try to graph this, and this is going to be, okay, so we're going to graph this first. And then, so 2 5, 2 5, 1 6, 0 7, and now we're going to come back down. So -1 6 and -2 5. Now, before we were just graphing a set of points or ordered pairs. On here, we're actually graphing an equation. So when you graph an equation, you must connect the dots, unlike the examples that we were doing before. So we're going to connect these dots. You want to bring it all the way down and put arrows, because that equation does go on forever. And that is actually in the absolute value family of graphs, which you will learn more about in Algebra 2. Finally, we're going to put this into our mapping. So we're going to have our input and our output. I'm going to draw my ovals. And I'm going to take it right from my table. I have 2, 1, 0, 1, -1, sorry, and -2. And then for my outputs, I have 5, 6, 7, 6, 5. But I only need to list those numbers once. Although 6 and 7 show up in the table, or I'm sorry, 5 and 6 show up in the table more than once, we only need to put them in our output column one time. So let's look what we have. We have 2 5, so 2 5, 1 6, 0 7, -1 6, and -2 goes to 5. So that is what the mapping looks like. All right, well, that was a short lesson. So you are responsible for completing number 2 on the front page, and then 4 and 2 on the bottom. And I'll be checking that for your homework grade next class.